Welcome to Let's Dig Deeper, a podcast devoted to exploring life through the lens of shadow work. I'm your host, Steph Flores, and together we'll journey beneath the surface into the parts of ourselves we often avoid and the truths that shape how we lead, live, and connect. This is a space for raw reflection, radical honesty, and the kind of conversations that invite transformation. So take a breath, get present, and let's dig deeper. Today I want to talk about that moment when you realize you've been moving, you've been doing, you've been responding and building, but you're not actually sure where you're going. You're checking things off, right? You're keeping up, maybe even thriving by some definition. But under all of that, there's this lingering question you keep asking yourself. What am I actually moving toward? It's easy to confuse motion with meaning. It's easy to stay busy and call it purpose. But today we're pressing pause long enough to ask, what does forward really look like for you now? So whether you're in a season of momentum or just trying to keep your head above water, this is your space to take this moment and dig a little deeper. We often equate movement with meaning. Like if we're busy, we must be getting somewhere. But sometimes we're just doing for the sake of doing. And I really want you to ask yourself, is this movement getting me closer to where I want to be? Is it keeping me from where I'm meant to be? Or is it just distracting me from the fact that I'm unsure? So pause the autopilot. Give yourself permission to slow down and truly reevaluate. See, this is more than momentum. It's about direction. Have you ever reached a goal and felt nothing? Or maybe the satisfaction only lasted a moment. I remember getting a job that I strived for. At one point I said this would be where I could see myself being for the rest of my career. The title, the department, I was sure that that was it for me. And I got it. I got a call out of the blue from the senior director of that team, and he asked me if I was ready to move over. No application, no interview, just a start date. And I was on top of the world. And a few months later, I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and I remember telling her, I made it to where I thought I wanted to be all these years. And still I feel something is missing. And that's not failure. That's data. That's information. It's feedback that what I thought would feel like forward was just a milestone, not meaning. And I think it's important that we take inventory and ask, what have I chased because I thought I was supposed to? And what did it actually give? Because forward needs to be defined by fulfillment, not just finish lines. And sometimes we mistake performance for purpose. We play the roles and we meet the expectations and get the exceeds on our annual review. But we're not grounded. Moving forward shouldn't mean abandoning ourselves. Moving forward shouldn't mean abandoning authenticity. So allow me to introduce to you the performance trap. And the performance trap simply is, if I do well, I'm good enough. If I don't, I'm not enough. And some signs you're stuck in the performance trap are, you measure your value by your output. Or you're only as good as your last success. So accomplishments lose meaning fast because you're already chasing the next one. Another one is rest feels like laziness, right? So slowing down, relaxing, or doing something just for enjoyment feels unproductive and wrong. Another one is you overcommit and overdeliver. So you keep saying yes to prove your worth, even when it costs your peace. Another one is you're afraid of disappointing others. So your identity is wrapped up in being seen as capable or successful, dependable, or the go-to person, right? And the last one is criticism cuts deep. Because performance is tied to your worth, any feedback you receive feels personal. And a question to ask yourself is, who are you when no one's watching? And how far have you moved from that version of yourself while trying to appear like you're moving forward? And as a reminder, your existence is proof of your worth. You being here, just being, is worthy enough. And as it relates to moving, what if you're moving without knowing where you're going? That's not failure. That's part of life, right? But if we never pause to ask where we're headed, we might just end up somewhere that doesn't fit. And this is your moment to check your internal compass, not your checklist, not your resume, inside of you, your soul, looking deep within. What does forward feel like in your body, in your spirit? What's your gut telling you? What moves you? What do you keep on going back to? Whatever it is, do that. Don't be the person making a ton of money somewhere that doesn't fit. See, when your passion and purpose collide, when what you love meets what you're good at, your soul exhales. It's like your entire being finally says, yes, this is it. So, what were you taught about progress? Were you taught that progress is linear, that it should always look impressive, that slowing down is lazy? I think it's really time that we rewrite that we make space for detours, reflection, and reevaluation, right? So your forward might be sideways. It might be stillness for a season. And that doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're leading from within, not being led by pressure. And you know what's actually brave? Stopping. Just stopping. To look around and say, I don't know what comes next, but I know I can't keep going like this just because it's what I've always done. You ever meet those people at work? They're doing the same thing every single time and there's a better way to do it. And when you ask them why they're doing it that way, their response is, well, that's the way I've always done it. But there's a better way. But they don't stop long enough to learn that better way. So don't be like that with your life, with your passions, with where you want to go. So when you can pause and stop and look around and say, I don't know what comes next, but I know I can't keep going like this just because it's what I've always done. That's real courage. Because let's be honest, most of us keep moving out of habit. We fill the calendar and say yes, and we stay busy because it feels easier than sitting in the unknown. But just because you're in motion doesn't mean you're in alignment. And just because something looks productive doesn't mean it's purposeful. Sometimes pressing pause is the smartest thing you can do. Not because you're giving up, but because you're finally listening to your body. Your burnout, your boredom, your quiet ache for something deeper. And let's be clear again, pausing isn't failure. It's wisdom. It's the moment where you stop letting life happen to you and start choosing what actually matters. You reclaim your agency when you say, I get to reevaluate. I get to change my mind. I get to stop and breathe. And here's something no one tells you enough. Stillness isn't the opposite of progress. Stillness is what gives progress meaning. Because what's the point of moving forward if you don't even know why you're moving? We spend so much time chasing and building and proving that we rarely pause long enough to ask, do I still even want this? Does this still feel like mine? Am I going through the motions? And listen, you don't need a 5-year plan right now. And some of you may disagree with me on that. I had a 5-year plan. You don't need to have it all figured out right now. You just need a moment to get honest. Because when you pause, even briefly, you start to hear your real voice again. Not the one shaped by pressure, the one shaped by truth. I heard a pastor recently preach a message about staying. And he said that to stay in pursuit of what you're moving towards, you need to remember why you're doing it. Pausing allows you that time to go back to your why. And I think it's important that we try asking ourselves, what part of my life feels like it's just running on autopilot? Where have I been afraid to stop because I'm scared of what might surface? And what would it look like to pause, not quit, just pause so I can catch my breath and hear myself again? And let's be real. Everyone feels behind sometimes, whether it's your career or your love life, your bank account, or that vague sense of, shouldn't I be further by now? We've all had that moment. But behind what? Compared to who? Most of the time we're measuring ourselves against a timeline we didn't even choose. We just inherited it from family or social media or that successful person we saw on TikTok. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're just not rushing. See, there's this pressure to hurry. Like if you don't get it all done by 30 or 40, you've somehow missed the mark. But rushing often leads to settling, to doing things just to feel caught up, not because they're right for you. And detours aren't failures. Changing your mind and switching directions or starting over, those are not signs of weakness. They're signs of growth. You're allowed to take the long way. And sometimes the long way is the most honest way. Forward doesn't have to be fast. And I think sometimes we equate fast with progress. Growing roots takes time. And learning yourself takes time. So peace doesn't always look like motion. It often looks like patience. And everyone's pace is different. And that's okay, right? Some people meet the one in their early 20s. Some don't until 40. And some people figure out their dream job early on. And some build 5 different lives before finding what feels right for them. And none of those stories are wrong. They're just different. And you don't owe anyone a timeline. Not your parents, not your followers, not the imaginary version of you that thought everything would be perfect by now. Your life doesn't need to match anyone else's pace to be meaningful. So what does forward look like for you now? Not what it used to be. Not what someone else tells you it should be. But what is your current season calling you into? Maybe forward is healing. Maybe it's creating. Maybe it's resting. Maybe it's becoming someone who doesn't rush anymore. See, only you can define your direction, but you have to be brave enough to ask the question. If there's one thing I hope this episode reminded you of, is this. You don't need to have everything figured out. You can be thoughtful without being certain. You can be in motion without rushing. There's value in asking, is the direction I'm heading actually mine? Or did I just keep going because I didn't know I could stop and check? Forward isn't always about crossing the next line. Sometimes it's about shifting the map entirely. So whether you're pivoting, adjusting, or slowing down, or just noticing for the first time that something feels off, take this as an opportunity to think bigger. Bigger than the checklist, bigger than the timeline, bigger than what you've been told forward is supposed to look like. I'm glad you're asking more from your direction, not just your effort. So until next time, keep digging deeper. Keep choosing you.